Okay, hi. As Joe mentioned, my name is Molly Struve, and before I get started, I want to point out that my Twitter handle is in the lower right-hand corner of all the slides, Molly_Struve. I've already tweeted out this slide deck, so if you'd like to follow along, go there. I am the lead site reliability engineer at Kenna Security. Today, I'm going to show you how to build a scalable monitoring system that not only your SRE team will love, but that everyone else will as well. So here's how the next 20 minutes are going to go down. First, I'm going to talk about all the monitoring mistakes we made at Kenna. Because let's be real, everyone loves a good look how we screwed up story. Better to learn from others' mistakes than make them yourself, right? After covering all of our monitoring mistakes, I'm going to talk about how we overhauled our monitoring system to create something that was actually useful and could scale with our organization and infrastructure. And finally, I will tell you all the ways this new system has paid off. Because if we're being honest, no one wants to listen to me talk for 20 minutes unless you know you're going to get something out of it. And I promise you will get something out of it. All right, let's take it back to the monitoring mistakes, and I will tell you just how we dug ourselves into a monitoring hole at Kenna. So like any startup, in the beginning, we were young, dumb, and we just wanted all the things monitored. We didn't really care how. We only cared that we had full monitoring coverage. In our quest for that elusive full monitoring coverage, we added many different tools to cover all different aspects of our infrastructure. First, we added New Relic for application monitoring. Next, we needed an error reporting service, so we threw in Honey Badger. Of course, what good are these monitoring services unless you have a good alerting service? So to cover alerting, we added PagerDuty. Now, these three tools covered our basic application pretty well. But another big piece of the Kenna platform is data. And it wasn't long until we started noticing that we had some data issues. So we decided that we should probably be monitoring our data. So to do this, we added some background cron jobs, which ran every 30 minutes and daily, looking for data inconsistencies. Well, that's all well and good, but how do we make sure these cron jobs are actually running when they're supposed to? To monitor the cron jobs, we added dashboards to the admin area of our application. These dashboards help us monitor the cron jobs as well as all of our background data processing jobs. So at this point, we're pretty darn proud of ourselves. I mean, look at all this amazing monitoring. But wait, there's more. One day, we heard about this cool new technology called a last alert that you could use to monitor logs and alert on problems. So, of course, we had to add that. Anyone feeling a little overwhelmed right now? I know I am. The worst part is the disaster doesn't end there. Not only did we have 6 different monitoring tools doing all of this monitoring, we had them reporting to all different places. We sent tons of alerts and data to good, trusty old Slack. At our worst, we had a different Slack channel for every one of our virtual private environments. So when someone went on call, they literally had to open up 10 different Slack channels in order to get all the relevant alerts they needed. We sent some alerts via text messaging. Nothing like waiting for a text from that crush of yours, only to find when your phone rings, it's a 404 from a tenacious but very lost user on your platform. Womp womp. Some alerts were sent by email. Now, how many people here keep a completely zero unread inbox? Okay. Oh yeah, we got a couple, but barely anyone. So as you might guess, sending alerts via email is not a good strategy, unless your strategy is that those alerts get lost in all your email noise. And finally, there were times when we would send alerts using phone calls. Nothing beats that robotic voice telling you your application is down. In case anyone missed any of that, let's recap. We have 6 different monitoring tools sending alerts to 4 different alerting mediums. And as if all of this isn't enough to make your head spin, the alerts we sent from all these tools were incredibly inconsistent. Some alerts reported data, but required no action. Many alerts would go off periodically and be false positives. In other words, they would tell us something was broken when really nothing was wrong. And last but not least, some alerts actually required immediate action. All these inconsistencies were not a huge problem at first because our team was small and we'd all been around a while, so we knew all the ins and outs of what alerts were important and what weren't. However, as our team started to grow, this monitoring system quickly began to make on-call devs miserable. No one had any idea what alerts were important and which ones could be ignored. And we didn't have the time or resources to teach all of our new developers our extremely outdated and overly complicated system. Even those of us who had been around a while, we quickly realized we had no idea what was even going on with our alerting system. So here's what I have to say about all this. Just don't. Don't do it. It is very easy to end up in this situation. You add some alerting here, you add some alerting there, but you never stop to think about how it all ties together. Our only concern was that we had coverage. Well, if there's one thing I've learned from this whole mess, it's that coverage doesn't really matter if you have no idea what is going on. With all these monitoring mistakes piling up, we finally reached a tipping point where we knew things had to change. And that's when the SRE team stepped in and we decided to overhaul the system by focusing on a few key strategies that I believe are essential for creating a monitoring system that can scale with your team and your infrastructure. I call these the monitoring must-haves, and there are 4 of them. Number 1, you must consolidate monitoring to a single place. This is especially important the larger your team gets. As more and more people join, it will be harder to onboard them if you have to teach them multiple different systems. Instead, when someone joins, it's infinitely easier to teach them a single system. Furthermore, when someone goes on call, it's a piece of cake when all they have to do is open up a single web page or start a single application. Now, I'm sure many of you are wondering what the one place we consolidated to was. For us at Kenna, it was Datadog. And the reason we chose Datadog was because it could literally hook into every other one of our existing tools, which meant everything could live in one place. We hooked it up to Honeybadger to track application errors. We hooked it into Circle CI to alert us of deploy failures. We sent statuses to it from StatusCake. You name it, we run it through Datadog. So now, when a dev goes on call, all they simply have to do is open up a single Datadog web page to view all of our existing monitoring tools. Having multiple monitoring tools is great, and you will likely need more than one to ensure that you cover all aspects of your application and your infrastructure. But you have to consolidate their reporting to a single place. Datadog is certainly not your only option. There are many other great companies such as Prometheus, New Relic, SignalFX, Stackify, SolarWinds. The list goes on, depending on your monitoring needs. However, no matter what you choose one that can integrate with all of your existing tools. So it's a one-stop shop to find everything you need. So to keep things simple and manageable, and make sure you consolidate monitoring to a single place. In addition to consolidating monitoring to a single place, another monitoring must-have is that you must make all alerts actionable. This means every single time an alert triggers, it must require an action. The moment you let one piece of noise through, you set a precedent for everything else to be ignored. I cannot stress this point enough. If you allow alerts to be ignored, you will very, very quickly forget what alerts are important and which ones aren't. And your devs will quickly be inclined to just ignore everything, which is not good. If an alert goes off and there's no action to be taken, then that alert should not have gone off in the first place. If you want things to alert that are not actionable, you need to put them in a separate place far away from your actionable items. One way you can do this is with different Slack channels. You could have a Slack channel that requires action and name it something like ops alerts or dev alerts. Then you could have a second channel that requires no action and name it something like ops reporting or dev reporting. However you decide to do it, make sure the action items are far away from their no action needed counterparts. Once you have ensured that all alerts are actionable, the next monitoring must-have for a scalable system is that you must make alerts mutable. In other words, you need to be able to shut them up when necessary. Now, some of you might be confused as to why this is important, so let me explain. In the beginning, a lot of our hand-rolled alerts would trigger every 30, 60, 90 minutes. Even if we had acknowledged an alert and were working to fix it, it would still ping us. And nothing is more frustrating and distracting than trying to fix a problem while there is an alert blaring in your ear. In addition to being downright annoying, the noise can also actually cause you to miss new alerts that might come through during an incident. And I can tell you firsthand when this happens, it's not good. Our first thought when we ran into this problem with our old system was that we would just make these special alerts mutable ourselves by using Redis and a console. This kind of worked, but requiring console access was a challenge, and the Redis commands were not intuitive. We needed an entire README just to explain how to mute alerts. In addition, we had monitoring tools, such as Last Alert, that we couldn't mute. So given all of these inconsistencies across all of our tools, it was a breath of fresh air when we gained the ability to mute all of our alerts using Datadog. Using this incredibly simple interface, we can mute all of our alerts for however long we need to. An hour, 2 hours, day, even a week. And this leads me to another small detail that I believe is worth mentioning. Not only do you want alerts mutable, ideally, you want to be able to mute them for a specific time frame. This will prevent you from muting an alert, fixing a problem, and then forgetting to unmute an alert afterwards. And forgetting to unmute alerts will also likely lead to missed alerts. I want to take a second to focus on how simple this interface is. It takes only a few clicks to mute an alert. When an alert goes off, it can be easy to get flustered. Whatever system you are using for muting alerts, make sure it is the same system for all alerts, and make sure it is easy. The last thing a frazzled on-call dev wants to do is go looking up a bunch of docs trying to figure out how to mute an alert. So to keep yourself and your team from wanting to scream while handling an incident, and to ensure you never miss an alert, you must make alerts mutable. Last but not least on my list of monitoring must-haves is that you must track alert history. Tracking alert history is not something you often think about until it's too late. Usually you wish you had it when you're staring at an alert and you have no idea what is causing it. It's always easier to find the root cause of an alert if you have the history and you know what the previous behavior was. If you have alert history, you can easily go back and see if this is something that usually happens daily, hourly, etc. Having alert history can also help you spot trends and find problems even before an alert is triggered. For example, let's say you're tracking database load. If you suddenly experience a large amount of growth, you can refer to your monitoring history for your database load to see if you're approaching an alerting threshold. You can then use this information to get ahead of the alert before it even goes off. And if we're being honest, the best alerts are the ones that never go off. Okay, so we have our 4 monitoring must-haves, which is all well and good, but I'm sure you're wondering, what do these monitoring must-haves get me? How is my team going to benefit from implementing these? So next, I want to talk about the payoff of implementing these 4 monitoring must-haves. First, onboarding is a breeze and easier for all parties involved. When a new developer starts, there are only 3 things you have to do in order to onboard them and bring them up to speed on your monitoring system. First, you have to show them the monitoring setup. Thanks to having all the monitoring in one place, this is a piece of cake. You can open up that single web page, start a single application, and show them around. This not only saves time, but is also a lot less overwhelming for those new hires who are already getting a million things thrown at them at once. Step 2, tell them the one rule to rule them all, and that is, if an alert goes off, you have to address it. There's no, well, if it's this alert, do this. Oh, if it's this one, you can ignore it. None of that. Plain and simple. If an alert triggers, you have to look into it. And finally, step 3, show them how to mute a triggered alert. Once again, this should be a simple process. No long list of commands, no giant readmes, just a few simple steps to mute an alert. By making onboarding a breeze, not only will you save your teams a lot of dev time, but it will also allow you to focus on growing your team as much as possible because you don't have to worry about your onboarding process. The simplicity of our system has not only led to easier onboarding, but also happier on-call developers. By requiring that all alerts must be actionable, we took all the ambiguity around what alerts were important and what weren't. And that has saved on-call devs a lot of confusion and frustration. It's also saved our SRE team a lot of bandwidth because we no longer have to waste time answering a bunch of alerting questions such as, excuse me, is this alert important? Do I need to worry about this? Should this be going off? None of that, because developers know if an alert triggers, they have to look into it. Making all alerts actionable also removed a lot of noise. Those crappy false positives that were waking people up at night are now completely gone. And well-rested devs are happy devs. The final benefit is the real kicker, and probably the most exciting benefit of all that you can get from implementing these monitoring must-haves, and that is developers began helping to improve our monitoring systems. Yes, you heard me right. Developers are actively contributing to the monitoring efforts. Because the new system is so straightforward and easy to understand, developers have bought into it and have started making their own alerts as well as improving on the ones the SRE team created. When the SRE team finished overhauling our system, we had around 30 to 40 alerts. A few months after introducing the devs to the new system, we had over 90 alerts, thanks to the additional help from the much larger dev teams. And as any small SRE team knows, any outside help you can get is a godsend. So like I said, this was above and beyond the #1 benefit of overhauling our system. So, if you want onboarding to be a breeze, and you want on-call developers to be a lot happier, and you want developers to help improve your monitoring systems, then you need these 4 monitoring must-haves. When you begin building an application, it is easy to just slap some monitoring on it without much thought as to the overall monitoring architecture. As the application grows, you add more and more monitoring. But if you don't have a monitoring strategy in place, it can get out of hand quickly. When you're building your next monitoring system, implement these 4 monitoring must-haves to ensure that you build a usable, scalable system that everyone will love. Thank you all for your time and attention. Does anyone have any questions?
Hi, thank you for your presentation. Am I correct in understanding that you had 6 different sources of monitoring data, and during the overhaul, you just added a 7th as an integrator over those 6? What happened to the code that basically exported data to the previous 6? Did you touch that at all?
So we did not. So you're correct. We added a 7th, but then we took those 6 that we had and ran them through the 7th. So that one Datadog is literally the aggregator for every other monitoring tool we have. So now everything runs through that.
Didn't that introduce more points of failure into the monitoring pipeline?
It did not, because we were initially, we had Ruby code to send data to all these existing tools, and now the data is just getting sent to Datadog, and Datadog has integrations with all the other existing tools. So yes, technically we have one additional point of failure, but we felt that was an acceptable risk to have, given that everything is now in one place.
Thank you.
Hi. how many persons you had before with those 6 tools, and how many persons you have now to take care of Datadog?
When we initially started with the 6 tools before we overhauled the system, we probably had 15 to 20 developers. We now have well over 30.
Daria, I can do this one first.
Thank you for your talk. How do you prevent monitor sprawl, especially if you say the developers are helping you develop the monitoring system? Because some situation I've seen in the past where we run up, a company I work for, run up to an order of 6,000 monitors in Datadog, which was enormous relative to the size of the company, and no one had a single view of what was going on. Also, silencing is really good, especially silencing alarms for 6 months or something. Like when they come back, no one has a clue what was going on.
Yeah.
How do you manage that?
Yeah, so in terms of preventing kind of like a monitoring explosion of alerts, we're small enough that we haven't reached that issue yet. We have 3 different dev teams, and so the dev teams each kind of make their own set of alerts. And they've been very responsible about making those alerts, so we have not had an issue yet of people just making a bunch of extraneous alerts. Someone over here? Yeah.
On the graph, the tracking alert history, which shows over time how the alert for a certain monitor is firing off, do you actually have the versioning of the monitoring also there to get into context that before the monitor was done another way, then that was changed, but still is the same? Yeah, so if I'm understanding your question correctly, the alerts, if we change them, we can't see on a graph what the previous threshold was. Say our threshold's 5, then we raise it to 10. It's just going to show 10 across our alert history, but we still have the alert history. So from the moment we have started sending the stats to Datadog or the metrics to Datadog, if we create a brand new alert today, I will have the history of all those stats, for the past, say, month that we've been collecting them. So you always have the data from day 1 of when you're collecting the metric, no matter when you create the alert. Okay, thank you.
Hi. My question is, so your initial problem was false positive alerts. And that's a common problem. But I can see how adding Datadog to the structure helps exactly remove that false positives and get into the state where all alerts cause actions.
Yeah, so Datadog itself does not, prevent that issue. You can still make alerts in Datadog that'll trigger unreliably, but that's why, this one of the monitoring must-haves is that all alerts must be actionable, and that's really up to your team to prevent. If an alert triggers and you realize that there's no action to be taken, then it's up to the team to say, okay, we need to fix this alert or we need to get rid of it. Yep.
One question I had, you mentioned the really important concept of making sure every alert is actionable. But when you have a team contributing, especially many different team members across many different teams contributing to the alerts, how do you communicate what action needs to be performed if every alert is actionable?
Right, so there's definitely different levels of action. We have some alerts that'll wake people up in the middle of the night, and then there's other alerts that you say, okay, it can wait till the next business day. And honestly, we've really left that up to the dev teams. So they've really taken ownership of their own monitoring alerts that they've created. And they honestly, when they make alerts and they end up being, unreliable, they fix them immediately because they feel that pain immediately of this stuff going off and not needing to take action. So we've really kind of left that to the dev teams, and they've done a really good job because they own it of making sure that they're reliable. Yeah.
Hey, thanks for the talk. You made a point of making it real easy to silence the alerts. And the previous question, how do you have a process in place to go through those silences and kind of cull them or address them so you don't end up with 30 silences or 6 months old silences?
So can you repeat the question? So are you asking how do we make them so they're all consistent?
How do you address the alerts that are silenced?
Oh, that are false positives.
or real alerts?
Yeah, so basically, we set up these alerts with the best intention of, okay, if this alert triggers, we should have to fix something. And then some of those alerts, despite the best intention, will go off, and there's maybe not an action to be required. And then at that point, we'll look at the alert and we'll adjust the levels. So there's definitely always a little bit of an adjustment period, but you just need to make sure that if an alert triggers and there's no action, that you immediately go evaluate the alert and adjust it.
I think he might also have been asking about how do you make sure if alerts are muted that they don't stay muted forever, that you don't end up after a major incident that there's 60 of them are muted and people forget about it.
Got it. So that's why I stress that the time frame is also super important. And so that's one of the nice things at Datadog is you set the time frame. And you want to be obviously cognizant of, okay, I think this will take me a day to fix. I'm going to set it for mute the alert for 1 day. And then the nice thing is, even if you forget, after 1 day that alert is going to be unmuted. So that's why a time frame is super valuable.
We have time for one last question.
Hey, so you get the alerts to your 6 monitoring tools, and then those alerts go into the Datadog. So what's the latency? Do you have any, have you faced any latency problem there?
We have not had any latency problems. I mean, you're talking like milliseconds. The alerts when we get them are, they're very fast. And usually we're aggregating data in order to get the alerts. And so there's a little bit of latency there. Like we're just looking at, a 30-minute window. So we have not had any issues with that yet.